helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES.
Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness with thought leaders. Today, we're talking about ADHD and emotions. A big topic online, especially more specifically, how to regulate emotions, something that is certainly a challenge for a lot of folks, but could be a special challenge for folks with ADHD. Dr. Laura Saunders is a psychologist at the Institute of Living in Hartford. She's had decades of experience with ADHD, so we're going to dive in. Thanks for being here with us, doctor.
Thank you for having me, Kara.
So it could be flying off the handle, flipping your lid, melting down. Emotions can be really, really big, especially for folks who have ADHD.
This is such an important topic to talk about because in my clinical experience, the ability to manage your emotions is a critical skill to have, but also a skill that you need throughout your entire life. There will always be events or hurdles or obstacles or situations where your emotions feel like they could cascade out of control. We know that folks, individuals, young people, adults with ADHD have particular difficulty in managing their emotions. And it's really, I think, a less talked about part of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Yeah, and I was reading in some of the articles that some people say they think it's their most difficult symptom, and that this can carry into adulthood. They might then be the spouse who the smallest thing just really sets them off, and that's one of the trademarks. Do you know why we see it more in folks with ADHD?
So I mean, when we talk about a true attention deficit disorder. And again, even attention deficit, ADHD is a spectrum, right? There are people that are kind of like have some signs and symptoms, but to have true ADHD, remember, you actually have to trace back the symptoms to before age 7, right? That's what true ADHD is, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. That doesn't mean that people don't have some traits of inattention or traits of impulsivity. So when we're talking about something that was present since before age 7, we are talking about something that is neurologically based, right? It's not just, it's not just sort of just a few symptoms. This is something where the brain is considered to be wired differently. So when you're talking about neurological symptoms or having a brain that's wired differently, to use just, common everyday language, we're talking about things that really have an impact on every aspect of your life.
Yeah, and my understanding of this is, let's say the part that really affects folks with ADHD is our prefrontal cortex or the master control, the executive functioning, and emotions or the inability to control them. Emotions are part of your executive function?
Yeah, so let's talk about what executive functioning is, because I heard an analogy years ago that I really love that I like to repeat. So because it's a term, executive functioning is a term that's tossed around, but I don't know that everyone truly understands it. So someone made the analogy that executive functioning is like the conductor of the orchestra. So you could have the woodwind section and the percussion section and the string section, but if there isn't a conductor to the orchestra to keep everyone going at the same pace, or to accentuate or de-accentuate certain aspects of your thinking, without that conductor, things fly at their own pace. So executive functioning is the conductor of the orchestra. If you don't have good executive functioning, that means that your emotion regulation might fly off the handle, or your inattention, or your processing speed, your ability to process information, right? Without executive functioning that keeps, your core skills sort of in check and sort of regulates them better, it causes a person to look very erratic, look out of control, look very impulsive, and so, to say and do very impulsive things. So we need executive functioning in order to regulate our emotions as well as our behaviors.
Right. So that makes a lot of sense. And let's talk a little bit about what the symptoms might look like if you have emotional dysregulation?
So I'll review some of them. So it's difficulty managing anger, right? So individuals with emotion dysregulation have difficulty controlling their anger. Often we realize that anger is an emotion where there's something underneath it. It could be shame, it could be hurt, it could be fear, it could be anxiety, but anger is what comes out. So your emotion regulation is shown through those individuals who have difficulty managing anger. Rapid mood swings, right? The way that I describe what we call labile mood or rapid mood swings, look at a 2 or 3 year old who goes from being happy to angry to smiling to crying to calm, right? You can see emotion dysregulation and rapid mood swings in toddlers, right? Because they haven't learned these skills yet. But when you see it in teens or young adults, it's equally as concerning, those rapid mood swings.
Yeah, and it could also be overreaction to a minor event. If you're living with someone with ADHD and you're thinking that was not that big of a deal, why are they screaming? So that's one way you might see it show up.
Yes, and so that's another really important kind of symptom to note. So if it's a small event, like they forgot something on their way to school, or they can't find something that they thought they knew where it was, and they have a huge explosive reaction, right? That is that really overreaction to minor events. Now, sometimes, there's an emotional buildup of many different small things that they try to contain, and they're sort of blowing up over the minor event, or sometimes there's just a pure overreaction without even that buildup.
So when someone's coming to see you and they're struggling with ADHD, there could be lots of reasons you might have this emotional reaction. But let's say that they're coming to you and they've got ADHD and they're saying, I'm really having a difficult time managing my temper, blowing up. Do you hear that a lot? And what's your advice?
So I do hear that a lot because, as I said, it can be a part of depression and anxiety. Also, difficulty controlling your emotions. But the first question I want to ask in that situation is, how is it impacting your life, right? In the life of a child or a teen, there's 3 main areas of their life. There's home, there's school, and there's friends, and there's social, right? Or you can put sports and activities in there. So how is your emotional difficulties or your impulse control affecting the areas of your life? So for an adult, it could be, how is it affecting your work? How is it affecting school? How is it affecting relationships, friendships? You want to know how these symptoms are impacting you, and is it hindering your overall functioning?
So if you're an adult and you go off and fly off the handle at work and you get disciplined for it, that's a problem that's affecting your life. Where if you're a teenager, maybe they don't care as much, but it might be like, it's really affecting my relation with my parents. I keep screaming at them, or my siblings.
Right. I mean, and that's one of the things you look for when you're doing an evaluation on someone. An adult, you would say, have you had problems keeping jobs, or have you had difficulty maintaining relationships or friendships, right? I mean, you'd have to do something really egregious to get kicked out of school. So they're not kicking you out of school, but are you getting into trouble? Are you getting detentions? Are you having difficulty with teachers because of, some of your problems controlling your emotions, right? Are you getting into a lot of fights? Is there a lot of miscommunications at home? Are you having a lot of consequences piled on you because of some of these emotion regulation problems? And you'd also want to know how it's affecting friendships. If you're that teen that's blowing up all the time on your friendships, people are going to take distance from you. And as parents, who might be the historians, they might say, yeah, my young person, my child or my teen can't seem to maintain friendships for any length of time.
Yeah, and that obviously is a problem for kids. I think I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless you.
That's hurtful, and then they feel like, gosh, I'm not part of a group, or so it can be really hurtful. But let's talk about, a lot of people who might be listening or watching could be a mom, and they're dealing with this explosive teenager who was an explosive elementary school person, and they're not sure what to do with it. And sometimes what we end up doing is yelling and telling them to calm down, which I know isn't the right thing. Is part of it that we need to understand this is a symptom of ADHD?
Yes and no. So yes, we need to understand that this may be something that is very, very difficult for them to control, right? The emotion regulation part, the impulse control, the frustration tolerance. It's something that's very, very difficult to control. The no part is, but that doesn't mean we excuse all their behavior, right? You still need to be accountable and have some standards. And if it's something that is that difficult for your young person to control or manage, you need to have help and support. That help and support might be seeing your pediatrician to get some initial self-report rating questionnaires, to see, a school support personnel, a school psychologist, or school social worker. If the behavior is affecting you in school, you might need to, see an outside therapist, psychologist, clinical social worker, someone that has some understanding and expertise in working with individuals who struggle with emotion regulation or significant serious ADHD, because we need to learn skills to manage it. It doesn't mean we totally excuse the behavior.
Right. Okay. And it's really important. I mean, that's the hopefulness. There's also, which I love, so much literature coming out. The Holderness family just wrote a book called ADHD is Awesome. There's another book, ADHD is Not a Four-Letter Word. I mean, we talk about some of the superpowers of the creativity and all the stuff that comes on the other side of impulsiveness, that sometimes the ADHD people are the folks who are great entrepreneurs or great extreme sports folks, or, they don't have to sit there paralyzed by thoughts. They just do it. But on the flip side of that is I've heard the analogy, you've got a race car brain with bicycle brakes. So you teach us how to slow that down. Like, we can help our kids learn some skills, mindfulness, that might over time reduce those flip outs.
Yes, I like that analogy. I might use that race car brain with bicycle brakes.
I didn't make it up, but I've seen it written in the literature.
I really like it. But right, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. There are things that you can do. And the first thing that we have to do in any of these situations is identify what the source of the difficulty or problem is, right? So we need to label it. We need to look at situations that tend to be more triggers. And by trigger, what we mean is those variables that cause you to feel set off. Now, if you're just overreacting to minor events, that means you're overreacting to a lot of different things. But it starts first with really identifying what kind of situations or what sort of emotions you tend to fly off the handle with. So it starts with the identification process. And then we work on some of the issues around, cognitive behavioral skills, thinking things differently, talking, doing self-talk, using things. It could be social skills training, for younger kids. How do you relate to peers? Someone takes your toy away, you don't, bite them or hit them or lunge at them. What do you need to do first? And so it might be mindfulness practice or meditation, really using some of these skills to decrease your overall arousal level. Because one of the things that is really key in an attentional disorder is what we call high arousal. Their brain's just going. So is their motoric activity. So we need to find ways to decrease that overall emotional and sometimes physical arousal.
Okay. So again, dealing with it in the moment of the flip out, it's not a time to yell back, which is maybe a habit of like, why is this person yelling at me or flipping out? That's not going to make, but bringing it down. Step one would be to calm things down, but then learning over time, learning these skills. And something that's simple, but you say surprisingly effective, is just naming the emotions. Name it to tame it.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it needs to start, because without that, you are just going to be reacting to all situations without a way to, like, okay, wait, I seem to get always angry right when I get home from school. Is it because I'm hungry? Is it because I'm frustrated? Is it because I'm tired? Right. So to really start to look at patterns of behavior, at times I think parents need to be junior psychologists, right? Psychologists are always looking for patterns in behavior. So you have to sort of help your young person figure out some of the patterns so that you can do things to prevent major blowouts or prevent, some of the really impulsive behavior by coming up with some of the things that you can identify as early as possible.
Yeah, and there's a very well-known book in psychology circles that I think a lot of parents have been told to read if they have a child like this, called The Explosive Child. And it talks a lot about kind of not giving too much attention to that negative behavior, but flipping it and really giving lots of positive attention when you see them moving in the direction. Do you agree with that? And how would we use this in situations so that we can kind of heal the morning meltdown every day?
Right. So yes, I do like that. And because it does a couple of different things. Number one, it helps you not personalize it. So sometimes when your young person's exploding, you personalize it. What did I do wrong? Why are they so disrespectful to me? Am I doing a bad job as a parent? Right? You really personalize that reaction. And I don't think that it's personal in those situations. So it works on not personalizing it. You also don't want to reinforce it. So if your child's emotional arousal or emotion dysregulation is up high, and now you're matching their emotion dysregulation, no one's in control of that situation, and it's only going to lead to a poor outcome. Conversely, what you're talking about is what we call differential reinforcement of other behavior, DRO. So differential reinforcement of other behavior. That differential reinforcement is when your child is doing something on task. It's the little things. Thank you for putting your plate in the sink. You just sat there quietly and ate your meal for 5 minutes without, spinning anything or playing with your phone. I just saw you put your laundry in the laundry basket, right? So it's really providing positive reinforcement for the little things, because think about this in the life of a young person with significant ADHD. They are getting constant negative feedback. Stop tapping your foot. Stop talking out loud. Stop, touching your neighbor's things. Stop doing this. Stop doing that. You're always like this. You're always like, all that negative feedback really serves to wear down their sense of self-worth and their self-confidence. And yes, you bring up a really good point, which is that a lot of these individuals have extraordinary strengths and talents, and those are what we need to focus on, not just all the deficits.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we want to focus on that, but as you said, we don't excuse it and say, because you're so creative, you can scream whenever you want. So we got to teach those skills. How some folks take medication for ADHD. Does it help with the emotional regulation?
So what the stimulant medication is really the longest used and most well-researched medication we have working with children and adolescents in the field of psychology and psychiatry, behavioral health. So what we know is that medication, stimulant medication, which you think is sort of the antithesis, because isn't their brain going 100 miles a minute? The stimulant medication actually serves to help improve focus and improve attention. So when you can be more focused and when you can pay better attention, you can keep track of the situations and the triggers to what might set you off, right? So it sort of has a secondary effect. It doesn't control the medication does not control your emotions. It doesn't dull your personality, because that's sometimes what people think. What it does is it helps slow down your thinking a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. Slow down your thinking and improve your impulse control a little bit, so that you can better use skills or better do the things that you need to do to identify your emotional state, to pick up on the patterns of when you tend to get explosive. So it gives you that extra half second to slow down a little bit and make better decisions, so that you don't spin yourself out of control.
Yeah. So back to that analogy, it slows down that engine a little bit, and then your brakes work better.
Exactly.
Okay. So sleep and nutrition. This is huge for everyone, but especially with ADHD and emotions. If you're not sleeping well or you're really having bad food, you might notice the emotional dysregulation really flaring more.
Yes. And I think one of the things to really look at with young people that have pretty significant ADHD is they often have a lot of difficulty falling asleep, right? Because their mind's going, they've got a lot of thoughts. It's sometimes hard for them to calm their body down. Also, individuals that are taking stimulant medication, we do know that one of the side effects of stimulant medication, based on dosing and when they take it, can add to difficulty falling asleep. So that's something to look at and talk with your prescriber about as well. But if we can, do the things that we need to do to settle your mind and your body so that you get a better night's sleep, we just all think and behave better when we have a decent night's sleep and when we have decent nutrition. Sometimes the medications, the stimulant medications also decrease your appetite. So these individuals just don't feel hungry. So, you have to do things like give them their breakfast before they take their medication, or just, encourage them to, even though they're not hungry, to eat little smaller meals throughout the day to give them sort of the nutrition and help their energy levels, because that stimulant medication can affect their appetite.
And it can also have that rebound effect that if you didn't eat well and then the medication wears off, some people go through even more of this angry phase as the medication's wearing off and they haven't eaten. So monitoring that, maybe even setting a phone alarm of saying, listen, you have to have a snack whether you think you want it or not, for your kid, or if you're an adult, saying just make sure you have that cheese stick at 3 o'clock. It's going to help you at 5 when you're feeling like you want to lose it.
Right. It's more of that preventative. And it's like, I work with lots and lots of individuals and parents on this issue, which is, even though you're not hungry, you're not eating because you're hungry, you're eating because you need some food in your system, right? You need some nutrition, you need some, fuel in your tank. So you're eating smaller amounts more regularly to get that fuel in your tank.
How do you teach a young person flying off the handle like this to take space or hit the pause button, which is one of the ways that we advise people? That's one of the things, piece of your advice. But, for those who see that this is just, oh my God, they have a short trigger. They do this all the time. It doesn't have to be that way. But how do you teach them to find their pause button?
So I think it starts, it can start in therapy, but it also really starts in the home, right? So you as the adult having to manage this individual means that you're not escalating your behavior. You're saying, you're not in control right now, I'm going to take some space, right? It's separating yourself from the situation, or you're not in control right now, you need to take some space in your room. So it's, pulling away anything that might fuel that arousal, because I'm telling you, there's no reasoning or rational thought that's happening in those high arousal moments. So finding ways to take space, and then as you develop strategies over time to better understand, like this is always happening right when they get off the bus, or right when they get home from school, or right before bedtime, or right before mealtime, right? So looking at what the underlying deficit is, right? They're flying off the handle when they're hungry, or they perceive that someone slighted them, or they misperceive that someone was disrespectful to them, and then they got really angry. So it's, really trying to identify those triggers. But I think in the beginning, it's not feeding into that, and really someone, the individual, the child needing to take space, and sometimes the parent needing to take space as well.
So you mentioned about feeling like someone, maybe they misread something. And I think this is also a common thing that people say they experience with ADHD. I think sometimes there's this name of rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD, like they're very extra sensitive to criticism or rejection, which then could cause these emotional outbursts. Do you see that as well too? Like sometimes you're just assuming the worst, that they're just thinking that like the whole world is ending and someone really hates them, and really that wasn't the case. They misread something.
Right. So I call it interpersonal sensitivity, right? So you are very, very sensitive to any kind of interpersonal interactions. And to some degree, that comes from all the negative feedback that you're getting. Stop doing this, stop tapping your foot, stop talking to your neighbor, sit back down in your seat, stop doing this, stop doing that, stop teasing your sister, stop, ripping up paper, stop tapping on your phone, whatever it is. You develop a sensitivity, or conversely, you become insensitive to any feedback because you get so much negative feedback that it doesn't sink in. But it's that interpersonal sensitivity where often they misread cues, misread social cues, or misread, adult cues. And so therefore that fuels that overreaction that they have.
So I guess number one, if this is new to you, and from the parent's perspective, or if you're listening as an adult and you have a late diagnosis of ADHD, or you didn't realize, hey, this is a symptom, because not everyone has it. I guess some people might have the more inattentive, more spacey ADHD, but some people are really like, this is an issue for them. They always are feeling overwhelmed or triggered, or like they're losing their emotion. So the number one thing you want us to know is we can get better at it, and that it actually is a symptom, and not like there's something wrong with you or your child. It could be a symptom, and that might help parents figure it out, that don't take it personally. This is a symptom of something that they're dealing with.
That's exactly it. So I do want it to be identified as a symptom. And it could be a significant symptom of an attentional disorder. It could be a symptom of something else, but that kind of wild mood swings or wild emotional dysregulation where they just don't seem to have good control over their emotions. They're overreacting to minor events. They're acting impulsively. They're, ruining relationships. That it is something to be addressed. It's not just something to be excused, like, oh, that's just the way he is, or that's just the way she is. It is something to be addressed, because think about the individual who's flying off the handle. They often feel a lot of shame, and they feel really negative things about themselves after these episodes. So you really want to give them an opportunity to label this, address it, and then identify a plan or some solutions.
And that could be just in the home. I mean, if you can't get in, or you're just, that's not something you're going to do, is go see someone like you. You're saying addressing it by even just talking about it, letting your loved one know, hey, a lot of people with ADHD struggle with emotional dysregulation. Here's a couple of things we could start working on that would make this better.
Right. As you said, there's several books out there, right? The Explosive Child. Barkley has a number of different books out there. Russell Barkley, he was one of the leading researchers and has written several books. There's a lot of resources out there. So even if you can't get access to, a helping professional, a psychologist or psychiatrist, clinical social worker, oftentimes actually schools, school system, your school support personnel, they have some resources that they can help you with. So I just don't want people, parents to really struggle with this alone, because it's not as uncommon as you might think.
Right. We only have a minute left, but I think it's so important. Thank you for coming on and raising awareness about this. It is getting talked about more. I've noticed there's some articles saying that it actually should be put in the DSM. Maybe it will be someday, but right now the DSM is kind of an old definition that was based around a lot of school-age boys way back when. So there's some talk about things are changing both for girls and for the idea that this emotional dysregulation is a symptom. So thank you so much. And as always, you're here for our free mental health resources. Dr. Laura Saunders, we appreciate you helping others get well.
Thank you for having me, Kara.
And for everyone watching at home, please share this YouTube video or the podcast. You can get it on any platform that you want. Really great information here. Have a great day. You can follow me on social media at Kara Sundlin. I like to share this content there. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.